Good evening, everybody. I am going to do a talk today that I titled Language Learning Methodologies as Applied to Learning Astrology. And I put the subtitle as How to Learn Astrology Even Faster. And the even faster part is because I actually have a video on my YouTube that is like 10 tips for how to do astrology, how to learn astrology fast. And this is like sort of an add-on to that because I've been studying Japanese, and in the course of that, I've been watching a lot of videos about language learning in general, but also about language learning for Japanese. And again, I'm grateful. I know some people are doing this for a living in some way or another, but they're free on YouTube, and I just watch so many things that people are so generous in mapping out the information that they've gotten through their years of study. And there's the same things for astrology too. But just really having some real insights from the type of things that I was studying, I wanted to share some of those with you, and hopefully they make sense because it was like a light bulb went on. They said astrology is a language. Astrology is a symbolic language, we say in Kriya Yoga. It's all symbolism. And but the symbols have a meaning, and they have a depth of meaning. And but you have to learn them. Some of the videos that I watched said that we should learn the alphabet first. Well, in Japanese, there's three different alphabets. There's Yes, and they have more letters and more letter combinations than the 24 or however many letters we have in the English alphabet. But they have three alphabets. Two of them are, consonant plus a vowel alphabets. And then one of them is the kanji, which isn't really an alphabet. It's just these little pictograms that have a meaning. And so they have a sound and the meaning. I don't want to get into teaching you Japanese. I just want to say that if you're trying to learn astrology, it's way easier than learning Japanese. It's so much easier because we're teaching it basically in English, and then you have some symbols. You just have, I would say, let's say 50 major symbols. So there's others, you could have as many symbols as you want, but really in terms of basic astrology, there's 50 symbols. But you don't have to do anything. This is just my advice. They have to be memorized if you really want to learn astrology. And I was really surprised because I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was a student who had a question about his chart, and he was trying to tell me what planets were where in his chart. And he said, well, what's that little symbol? And it's got a circle, and then it has an arc, and then it has a cross. I go, well, that's Pluto. He goes, well, that's not the Pluto I learned. And that's because there's two different ways of doing Pluto. But I mean, really, if you want to know astrology, you have to learn it. And one other thing that I learned from these language learning things is that there are people who did learn a second language, like, for example, when they were children, but when they grew up, they couldn't remember it anymore. So learning a language once, one time, and I've done this too, where I've studied other languages and maybe I wanted to know something just for a vacation trip or something. I wanted to know some of the language of the country I was going to. And I studied it intensely for a short period of time. But then when I got back from vacation, I stopped studying it, and now I don't remember it so well anymore. Language learning and learning astrology are both something that if you really want to be good at it, you have to do consistently on a regular basis. And it's the only way to really get it into your head, and have it stick there. And even if you do things like I had to take a break from being an astrologer and work at a 40-hour-a-week corporate job for a number of years. And when I retired and went back, I went like, what happened to my words? I couldn't I
Mm.
couldn't remember the words that went with it. I mean, it all came back to me. Let's say no step on the path is ever lost. But in order to in order to get better at something that you're trying to learn, there's a consistency that has to happen, and some rules that have to happen. And my rule is you have to learn the symbols and memorize the symbols of the astrology alphabet with the keywords that go along with those symbols. So it has to be a little bit more than the circle with the dot is the sun, and you know that one. It has to be more than that. And it has to be not in English, but it has to be in those symbols. I'm not saying that you can't learn a lot of astrology if you're just learning English and you're looking at a sentence. The sun in English words, the sun in Aries means this. But if you want to learn how to read charts, you have to look at the circle with the dot in the sign with the ram's horns, and remember that it's a fire sign and it's a cardinal sign. Those symbols have this depth of meaning, and it means energy and aggression and, all these different types of things that could mean. I'm not your mother. I can't make you memorize things. I'm not a teacher in a class. It's not like you're going to get a grade. But if you want to be a good chart reader, you have to memorize the symbols, and you have to look at them on a regular basis. If you want to say every day, look at them every day. And you have to be able to write them. You have to be able to take a pen in your hand, or you can have a stylus and a pad, an electronic device. But you have to be able to write them, because in language learning, I discovered a good recommendation. It says, have a balance between input and output. So this can really apply to anything that you're trying to learn, whether it's a language or astrology or anything. We can do a lot of inputting, we can read books, we can watch podcasts, we can do a lot of things. We can memorize the symbols on paper so that we can read them, but um, but I don't think you'll memorize them correctly unless you also learn how to write them, and not just the circle and dot, all of them, all those symbols. You have to be able to do that type of symbolic shorthand because it puts something different into your brain. So we, as a whole, we as humans tend to do a lot more input than we do output. But language learning, if you don't balance it out, then you're going to not be able to progress as fast. And it will help you to um, remember things and remember things when you use them on a regular basis. And so in terms of this basic beginning part of learning the symbols, the input is studying them and learning the keywords, and the output is writing the symbols with a pen on paper, and then maybe using flashcards to quiz yourself with the keywords. So that kind of thing. So that's an input output kind of thing. And the ultimate is to be able to look at a chart, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can give you an example, in which you already do. I'm putting up Matt Damon's chart because on AstroDataBank, this is an AA chart. That means it's the birth data is correct. It's getting like an A+ on the birth data. Apparently, the people who are part of the Odyssey movie are in. The AI told me that people who are in the movie The Odyssey are the newsmakers right now. The AI will tell you lots of interesting stuff. So we can look at this later, but you want to be able to take this chart and be able to read it, whether you're just starting simply. You can start from anywhere. I like to because I like looking at charts, I like to look at what's interesting to me. So to me, what's interesting is like, oh, wow, look at that Neptune conjunct the midheaven. And that, so that has a meaning in terms of, wow, somebody who's in film, somebody who's an actor, somebody who takes on a persona, because Neptune has a lot to do with personas, with what do you, stage names, that type of thing, taking on different things, but also being very creative, very intuitive, and being able to merge into a role, which is what actors would want. And then and we can talk about him a little bit more afterwards, but you can do it with keywords. And so when I sort of in this study group, sometimes I'll push you to say, hey, just use a couple keywords. Just say, oh, Sun in Libra, here's a balanced person, person who is balanced, person who's tactful and diplomatic. That's like three keywords, interesting keywords. And you can and you can just start from some part of the chart and go to the next part of the chart. How about his moon sign? Oh, moon in Capricorn in the 12th house. Bet he's got some secrets in there, or whatever you want to say about it, or that that there's some part of him that's very practical, even though there's a part of him that's very tactful and diplomatic, or he's Aquarius rising, and you could say, well, he's with the Libra, very easygoing. So you're doing sun, moon, rising sign. That's where we start. That's where we're at. Anyway, we'll talk more about Matt Damon in the discussion. But you want to be able to read it. You want to be able to go like, oh wow, this circle with all these squiggly shapes in it is telling me a whole lot of something. But this is so you have to know the basics. And so if you're an astrology teacher, you want to emphasize this, even though everybody wants to go into the more, everyone wants to go faster. It's easy to go faster. It's easy to be interested in going faster. You want to know everything at once, but you have to memorize the stuff. And this is all just very foundational. And the language learning that I've been interested in and studying about, it's that you need to go slow with gaining fluency with the foundational knowledge in order to go fast in the rest of your learning. And like you can't be a first grader and skip the alphabet, or the ABCs, or you can't, the teacher can't say, well, those are just the ABCs. You can skip those and then learn reading somehow. You can do it by immersion. I'll just read you stories and you won't have to do the ABCs, and then you'll just pick it up some way or another, right? So the next thing I would say, this sort of like the next step, is to have a learning plan. And I'm just saying this is if you want to gain any level of fluency in astrology beyond where you're at today. Make a learning plan. Don't just assume that it's going to come to you just because you're sitting in this class, or you're sitting in another class, or even if you go to a conference. Make your own learning plan, not just what do you want to, what are your goals with astrology? But one of the lessons that I learned from, because I'm doing Duolingo, which is a free language learning program, is that if you go in and learn something every day, you begin to expand your vocabulary. And it's the same with astrology. There's a vocabulary that goes with the symbols and a vocabulary of astrology. So if you have a learning plan, it really should be like learn something every day, make your brain work. I'm very much into making my brain work. I don't know how long it'll last. So I want to get it to work as much as possible and see if that can be helpful to me. But yeah, and somehow if you can pat yourself on the back, give yourself a gold star if you learn something. But I think if you're trying to advance from just having basic astrological knowledge to becoming fluent in reading charts, one goal could be just look at a different chart every day. If you go to astrodatabank.com, there's hundreds and hundreds of charts that you can look at. Or you can just Google somebody you're interested in and just Google this person's birth chart, and somebody will have a copy of it. And I'm going to say this, and you probably won't want to do it, but it was part of the professional astrology class. So I recommend taking that data that you might get from Astro Data Bank or wherever, getting some chart paper, just we used to like buy it. Now all you have to do is like, Google chart paper and print some out so that you have like a nice circle, or get the chart paper and draw the chart out for yourself. So you're going to see it on AstroDataBank. I don't like how they have it. I always put it into my software and do it myself. But just draw it out. I mean, put the symbols, draw the circle with the dot, put the symbols, put the degrees and minutes into the chart. There's another way that your brain thinks about these things when you do it with your hands. It's a type of memorizing by muscle, if you want to say it, your muscle memory. So that's another way to make the data more interactive, if you want to say it that way. And another way is an output way, which is to write down or say to yourself what you see in that chart. So if you're looking at somebody's new chart every day, or just somebody, it could be somebody you know, or it could be somebody famous, or it could be anybody, just a chart. And just maybe you don't have to say it quite out loud. You can just say, tell yourself the story that you see in the chart. Or write it. I used to take paper with a chart on it, and a pen, and I would just write all over it. I'd make little notes, or make little notes in every house, or whatever I saw, I'd make notes on it, because that helped me to learn it. Everybody's different, so if you are beyond the basics, then make a learning plan for whatever area of astrology you want to learn next. Find out what books, teachers, podcasts talk about this subject. You want to add extra things in slowly so that you understand and make sense of the content. And something else about content is the content or your input should be comprehensible. So one of the language learning people said, comprehensible input is the key. And he said, you can be watching in Japanese, you can be watching a Japanese drama or an anime or something, but if it's not comprehensible at all, you're not going to be able to absorb it. So I would say, whether it's a book or a lecture, find a teacher or a writer that makes sense to you. If the content is too advanced for your level, or if it's just boringly philosophical, skip it, at least for now. There's at least a couple of astrology books that I started reading because I thought the title sounds so good, and this is just what I want to know. But the writing put me to sleep. So I literally I'd read a couple of pages, I'd literally fall asleep. So you have to know, if it's too boring, just skip it. There's so much good stuff. You can find somebody else who might come across it in a more give you the information in a more simple way, or something you can begin with and get more fluent in that particular area. And the other thing about comprehensibility is that this is something that actually is called the confidence competence loop. And it says that people lose confidence in their learning when you watch or listen to something that is very far beyond your skill level. It can be really discouraging. So I want to share something on my screen with you again, and share screen. Okay, it's sharing the screen, which is this is the program for UAC, the United Astrology Conference, that's happening at the beginning of September. And I'm I'm scrolling down because every day there is multiple topics, multiple lectures with multiple topics. And rectification solves birth time dilemmas for accurate delineation and forecasting. Well, if you're a beginning astrologer or astrology student, you may not know what rectification is, and you might not know what the birth time dilemma is, and you might not know what accurate delineation is. So the secondary progressed Mercury, Venus, and Mars in retrograde phases. That sounds good. You might not know what secondary progressions is. Archetypal astrology and psychedelic therapy. I love the titles of these, but okay, the MCIC axis, the zenith and the nadir. What if you don't know what the zenith and the nadir is? I mean, you can get over as a student, you could go to a conference like this and get overwhelmed just by the titles of the things, but it gives you an idea of how complex astrology activate aspects with ancient timing, work with the minor years and ascensional times. Alrighty then. So it's like I don't know. I want you to know that I sometimes I know what they're talking about and sometimes I don't. There's just so many different types of astrology, so many different teachers that um but yeah, and some are really simple. And but they're all if you don't know the symbols and you don't know the vocabulary and you don't know the words, nobody's gonna stop and give you basic astrology while you're in a conference like this anyway. I'm gonna I'll put the link in the chat when we get to the discussion time, and that way if you want to look it up yourself. It's super fun just to look at all the topics because it's vast. It's super vast. Super big. Okay. If you come across a term or word you don't know, look it up. That's something that can be helpful to you too. I mean, maybe not if it's every other word, but if you're reading something in astrology, you might enjoy going down the rabbit hole of whatever that is. And the internet will tell you a lot, or that as much as I'm uncomfortable with AI, the AI overviews in search engines will often give you some very good information. You know, if you want just a definition of something, it'll give you a definition. I want to know if you're using all the tools. So there's audio tools, there's visual tools, video, there's podcasts, there's books, there's apps. I say get your own astrology software. You want to be able to run as many charts as you want in whatever format looks right to you. So, I mean, this is not if you're a beginning astrology, if you're a beginning astrology student, you just go online. There's lots of ways to get free charts. But if you want to study astrology, you really want to be able to get the right types of charts for what you want to look at. Go to as many live Zoom and in-person astrology groups that as many as right for you. And there's a lot of meetups really that have these things going on. There's things going on all the time. And then advice for intermediate and advanced students. Get readings from professional astrologers if you haven't had one. Learn how the professionals do a reading, learn their different styles. So that might cost some money, but it depends if you're going for a more professional goal. If you have a more professional goal, I would say get a reading from somebody that you know is a good person, or get a recommendation. Every astrologer has a different type of reading style, emphasizes different things. But that may be really helpful. That's like, it's learning all in itself. When we used to have astrology conference, more local astrology conferences here in Chicago, sometimes there'd be like a guest of honor type of speaker. And often they would do like a little shorter reading for a little less money than they might in their hometown. And it was a way to like really hear somebody, if you know your chart, and then you can see somebody giving you input in a different way, that can be really helpful. It's just something that can be helpful. It's not like you have to do it, but I don't think you can really learn how to be an astrologer if you haven't had an astrology reading. And then the last thing is that they talk about in language learning is immersion. And so in Japanese, they say AAJTT, all Japanese all the time. And so you can say AAATT, all astrology all the time. So I would say, like, relate everything to astrology. Look around your house. What rules your electrical appliances? What rules knives? What rules jewelry? What rules your clothes? Get a copy of Rex Bill's The Rulership book. It tells the rulerships of all the different things in astrology. And you can probably find it online by Googling it. I don't know, what rules What rules my computer? What rules this? What astrology planet or sign rules this? So, but everything. So people who are language learning, they get sticky notes and they put it on their refrigerator and they'll say refrigerator in the language they're trying to learn and that type of thing. So try to immerse yourself in astrology. Track your own aspects. Watch your own life every day to see how astrology is mirroring your life events. By the way, don't try to control or manipulate other people with this information. Okay, this is just for you. But you can also make your own predictions. Write down what you think will happen for you at the next lunation or aspect and keep a journal and see if your predictions are accurate. And then you want to have immersion output. So you've got Leslie taking a lot in, you're making your own predictions, which is sort of an input-output balance type of thing. But one thing you can do, if you're listening to an audio or watching a video or taking notes from a class that you just took, afterwards, go home or turn things off and teach it back to yourself out loud. You want to have the ability, again, this is a type of fluency thing, where people sometimes will study a language and study and study and study, and then they go to the country where that's the language, and they find they can't even say one sentence to somebody else. They just don't know how to speak it. They haven't practiced speaking it. So say it to I mean, you can just do this to yourself. Say it to yourself out loud. Number two, that was point number one. Number two, teach somebody else. If you have somebody else that is a friend and wants to learn astrology, you learn something and teach it to them. That's the only way that I can keep what I know is by teaching it. So that's why you're here. You're just all here helping me. And hope you understand the exchange, I would just go and play video games, I think, or read a book or something, but instead I spent today like getting ready for this class, right? So go, and then also go to live Zoom astrology groups that have time for chatting, for talking to somebody else, so you can speak the language of astrology with other people. I just checked today, Meetup has a lot of these. If you go on Meetup or you go somewhere else, or even in our discussion, our discussion groups here, we do the same thing. We talk about it. And I would say swap readings if you can with other astrology students. My last point is don't get so wrapped up in astrology that you forget about the rest of your life. It's not everything. These are just some helpful hints and tools that you can use or that your students can use in relating language learning to learning the language of astrology.